Did you know? Researchers spend months writing an article that is going to be read by 10 or 20 people. But if we break the logic of this, alright, you have your article and maybe 20 people are gonna read it and you took months writing it. But then when you're given the opportunity to create slides that will directly impact 100 people, maybe 200 people, you only use a couple of days to do it. Seriously, why? You must know that your research can be presented in many forms, and only one of those forms is your article. So you always have to bear in mind that your presentation is not your paper, and it shouldn't be treated as such. So welcome back to Design for Scientists and today's Masterclass, embarrassing mistakes to avoid in presentations. And we're so glad to have you here. Now, this is me about 14 years ago. I was a biomedicine student and later researcher. And I would attend to my classes, seminars, conferences, poster sessions, and so on. And whenever I did it, it was so clear to notice how visual presentations were not effective in delivering their message. Or simply put, most presentations were boring. And I'm pretty sure that if you are a researcher yourself, you feel the same way. But it shouldn't be like that. I am lucky because for the past 7 years, I've had the chance to learn directly from my now wife, Luisa, to the point I was able to create these incredibly efficient presentations. But it took me 7 years of constant learning. And it wasn't until January this year that my lifelong friend Josu, who is a postdoc researcher in Canada, was invited to come to Europe for a conference in Germany, where he was able to present his research for more than 300 people. And the good part is that afterwards he was able to come visit us here in Spain, where we live nowadays. And what happened was that Luisa and we were here, and then he came visit. And the thing is that he knew that Luisa is a brilliant designer with more than 12 years experience crafting visual materials for big brands such as Coca-Cola, Heineken, and Skype, for example. And that she just graduated and obtained her master's degree at IED, the European Institute of Design. So he took the opportunity and asked for feedback on his presentation. And what we understood is that, much like Josu, there are so many other scientists that receive no education on how to design. And for that reason, effective visual communication is still lacking among most scientists. And at that moment, we knew we had to do something about it. So I just came to Luisa and said, why don't we unite my experience and understanding of the scientific world with your extraordinary knowledge of design in order to create as much value to other scientists, just as we did with our friend Josu. And that's why Design for Scientists was born. It's absolutely clear to us that scientists value excellent visuals, but are just not academically prepared to improve in this so incredibly important skill. And it's such a powerful area that we decided to help as much as possible. And right now, we will show you exactly why today's approach towards slide presentations does not work. And we're going to show this with a series of examples of what not to do in your next presentations. And I'm pretty sure again that you've seen this before, but it's always good to hear again. And after this masterclass, we will be launching the Design for Scientists program. So in case you're interested, stick until the end. So number 1, don't assume great science speaks for itself. If you see something like this, it could be the most incredible research of all time, but nobody will understand, no one will want to pay attention, and the scientists who did this will probably have a hard time finding a collaboration. As we just said, your research can take a form of an article, but creating slides is a whole different process. Now, don't consider exceptional presenters as naturals. You know, those who can deliver presentations without effort or rehearsal. This does not exist. In fact, there are 3 main components of a presentation. And here, regardless if you are talking about slides or a poster presentation, for example, you will always have your content, which most of the time is your research, your ideas, experiments, results, or anything that you want to communicate to your audience. Then there's also the visual information that you're going to put there. And that can be the figures and mostly your slides and the way they look. And at last, there is the delivery part, of course. And that's your narrative, which includes the non-verbal communication such as your body language. But you see, these 3 things, they don't come naturally. You need your science, you need design concepts, and you need the confidence to deliver effectively. So having that in mind, don't skip the motivation. Know that in general, people will pay attention, following a pattern like this. And you see that in the beginning, people are more likely to pay attention. So always keep the motivation up. And that will help you keep this curve as high as possible. Remember, in the end of the day, this behavior from your audience is inevitable. But if you take care of these few details, you are more prone towards success. Another point that will make your presentation embarrassing is if you start too detailed or too specific. What you want to be doing is always starting broad. This way, it's much more likely that you will impact, at least at a certain degree, everybody in your audience. Then the ones that want to stick with you will. Just after that you will get specific. And that means that your presentation will go towards a data dive, probably multiple times. But just know that you will get specific at certain times, but other times you will be less technical and more general. And number 5 goes with the same line. Just don't spend too much time on an outline slide. And you've probably seen these embarrassing moments where people stay like, let's say 5 minutes in a slide like this that won't give you any information. Basically, it would be saying, alright guys, today I'm gonna be here talking about the introduction first, and then the next I'm gonna be talking about methodology, and I'm gonna explain the methodology, and then I'm gonna talk about results, blah blah blah. Again, it's something that adds no value to your talk, to your point, to your message, and we definitely recommend skipping this. Or what you could do is using this as a home slide. So basically, you introduce your topic, you go for it, and then you come back, introduce your next topic, go for it, come back, and keep doing this, just to guide your audience so they know where you were, where you are now, and where you're heading next. And this is the use of a home slide. And just make sure you don't include verbal distractions in your delivery. And that means eliminating any unnecessary apologies, nervous feelers, sorry. No, nothing like that. Now visually, in order to respect your audience, don't write full paragraphs. We've all been tempted when we add a slide like this to just copy and paste from our paper, right? And then we paste again, maybe add a title, and we're done. And by now, if you've been seeing our classes, and just from experience, you know how ineffective this is. And even worse, don't use your slides as presentation notes. For a short quote, it can be effective. But then if I start reading everything that is here word by word and continue to do this for a whole 10-minute presentation, for example, it will probably make you tired and uninterested. So don't do that, of course. And that leads us to unnecessary animations. And that can be super embarrassing because they serve no purpose in your presentation. And even worse, they're distracting. But as you may know, there are times that they can be effective. And those are very specific cases. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you're talking about the lung and the structure of the lung, and then you explain this and that. An animation or transition that you can do is, let's say you want to go deeper and explain about this specific part of the lung. And just by using a zoom animation, and then you can explain your point 1 and 2 and so on. Now, one of the most embarrassing things that everybody does, and I've done before, is using graphs and tables directly from your paper. But then you end up with slides like this, and they look terrible. You might feel the need to add every data point of your graphs, but unless it is specifically important for the message that you want to convey in that slide, having all this clogged information won't help you. And there's another mistake here. Don't present more than one table or chart per slide. Talk about one and only one. And if you want to compare more than one graph, then maybe discuss another one. But in order to remove distractions, make sure that you make the other one disappear, or use a transparent effect like this. And this is obvious, but have you seen people doing this? Probably not too much, right? So make sure that you do, and your message will be more effective. Now, one of the most facepalm moments that we can have in a presentation is when people use noisy backgrounds. Or maybe, I don't know, they include their institution's logo in every slide. Again, it's something that serves no purpose, and plus it's distracting. If you feel like putting an image like this as your background, you see that there's almost no space for your visual content to appear. Also, if you use an image like this that has light and dark colors, it will make your content confusing. And most often than not, it won't have enough contrast with your content so the audience can understand exactly what's going on there. So just avoid those. And hopefully, everyone that we know does the same. And that brings us to point 13. Don't use colors for decoration. You should only use colors as a tool to better communicate visually. And that means that colors should contrast. And you've probably seen a slide like this. Charts like this are also very common in posters. And designing is not putting colors in stuff. In fact, here, it could be much more effective for you to present a graph that has only one color, and maybe a white background to increase the contrast. And if you want to make a specific point about it, use a darker version of your color. And there you go, that's a clear focal point there. And in this case, your color has a purpose. Now, don't go crazy with fonts. Seriously, don't ignore the decisions about typography. Make it as legible as possible for your audience. And a quick tip would be, for your serif font, just use Times New Roman. And that includes when writing your article, for example, but also in text blocks of your posters. But in slides, most of the time, for titles or anything that you want to see at a distance, you will be using a sans serif font. And you can go with Arial, and you will be fine. Now, one of the things that I feel that is the most embarrassing possible, and it's almost like a disrespect, is going over your time. And here, obviously, practice makes perfect. And a simple thing that you can do is that you have this screen in your computer. Whenever your presentation is in the projector, you're gonna see this, and just make sure you keep track of the time there. Don't depend on anyone else to keep track of time for you. Again, this is simple advice, but how many times have you seen people going over time? Way too many. So make sure you aren't one of those people. And something that I really think it's also very embarrassing is answering questions to a blank screen. Basically, you finish your presentation and this screen comes up. We want to use visuals to help us and our audience to understand our content. In the end, they will be making questions, which means that they are interested. And there are other times that a thank you is your last slide, and it also adds no value. Our advice is have a slide like this, a special one, where you have your big idea up there, one or two of your most important figures, and your contact information, of course, just in case someone wants to talk to you afterwards. Not everybody likes to ask questions in public. And of course, you can have your institution's logo there, for example. Now, don't trust templates. They are pre-designed to be general, universal. They won't lay out your content optimally. Make sure you design your own and emphasize the elements that you find most important. Basically, everything that you want to talk about and these pre-designed templates, most of the time, don't fit together very well. So instead of being slide-centric and then figuring out how to fill this template, be idea-centric. And start by first outlining your ideas, and then you apply them to the slides. I know that starting with a blank slide like this can be challenging, but then you will be able to put up your content there with purpose, and that makes a whole lot of difference. And our last mistake is being intimidated by the concept of design. Just embrace design as a process, a way for you to improve your communication with your audience. Designing your visual elements is simple, but it's not easy. And if you've been watching what we do here, and you think that our presentations are effective in delivering our message, then you can logically see that we know what we are talking about and that we are able to teach it. And these were the 18 mistakes, basic mistakes that are still done nowadays, even though they are embarrassing. But you know there is a better, more effective way to communicate your science. And in case you liked this video and you want to take the next step, we launched the Design for Scientists full course. And in this course, you have more than 90 minutes of effective to-the-point content with 19 classes divided into 5 modules. And these are the exact pillars that you need in order to create these effective presentations. Basically, you learn all the design fundamentals, the most crucial visual principles, the key design elements, how to present data effectively, and other bonus materials, such as a template for your next poster, and resources that every scientist should know about, but probably don't. And the best part, you don't need any prior experience in design, and all the content will be available wherever you are, whenever you need. All via on-demand short videos that go to the point. And when you complete the course, you get your certificate. And hopefully, this will be you. Enroll right now, you have the link below, and I'll see you in the course.